Parents of Reddit, what is the scariest thing your child said to you or to someone? Will the man in the attic come with us when we move? My aunt-in-law grew up in a 3-flat in the 50s. Her family owned the entire building and the apartments were connected by a stairway in the back. They never locked their back doors and the top apartment at the time was empty. She told us that when she was little, a man from the 3rd floor would sometimes come down to her room, which she shared with her sister, and talk with them. He also sometimes read them stories. She told her parents, but they never believed her, thinking she was young and making it up. Months later they went up to the 3rd floor apartment and there was evidence that someone had been living there. She said he was a very nice man and would often sit in their room and talk with them at night. ETA, it was actually the attic, not a 3rd floor apartment, the guy was living in. My adorably innocent 3-year-old lovingly told me, "Mommy, when you die I'm going to keep your body so I can pet your hair." He was petting my hair at that moment. When my daughter was 3, she came home from preschool one day and her demeanor changed the minute we came home. She became very withdrawn and looked very upset. I asked her what was wrong, and she said, "The angel on the roof is angry with us." Flushed. I'm not a parent, but I was putting my 2-year-old niece to bed, while babysitting one night, when she looked over my shoulder and said, "Who's that?" I looked behind me and asked, "Who?" She said, ***, the man behind you. He was with you in the kitchen too, ***. We were the only ones in the house. I spent the rest of the evening in the living room, on the one chair with its back to the wall, glancing around nervously. Mummy, the invisible man wants to come in your bedroom. Absolutely not. My 3-year-old, poop is like a fart cake. Not my kid, but my friends. They were across the country visiting family and out for a drive. Her 4-year-old points down an old overgrown road, more of a dirt track, and said, "That was where I used to go to school." She told him he didn't even go to school yet. Mentioned it to her brother when they drove by another day, and he told her that well down that track used to be a schoolhouse in the 1800s. Same kid was on a walk with Mom in our town around a fairly wooded pond. He asked his mom if they could go another way. She said there was only path and asked why. He responded, "I don't like that man hanging from the tree." Needless to say, they moved away from that area very quickly. A few weeks after my son turned 2, he told me, "Look, the smoke dissipates." This is not a word in our daily vernacular, so I asked him what that means and he said, "It disappears." Impressed, I asked him, "Where did you learn that word?" and he replied, "When I was an adult." I laughed and asked him, "When were you an adult?" and without missing a beat answered, "Before I was born." Flushed. My daughter is 3 and is working on performing her own nighttime routines. We asked her how she gets ready for bath time and gave her stuffed bunny to demonstrate on. She takes the bunny and begins explaining the steps of her routine, mimicking the actions on the doll. First you take off your pants. She wiggles Rabbit's legs. Then you take off your shirt. She wiggles Rabbit's arms. Then you take off your underwear. Wiggles the legs again. Then you take off your hands. She pulls on Rabbit's arm in a plucking motion. Then you take off your arms. Rabbit's arms are wrenched immediately. Then you take off your legs, your hair, your tummy, your face. She gleefully laughs as she mimes ripping each part off of Rabbit. All done. She looks up at us with a smile. We are aghast. Woke up one night and my 3-year-old isn't in his bed. It's about 3 a.m. The house is dark and quiet. I go downstairs and a nightlight is on, and my son is just sitting on the couch staring into space. Doesn't say a word. The hair on my neck was standing up. I said quietly, "What's going on?" He looked at me strangely and said, "I just have to wait until everyone is asleep." Goosebumps all over my body, and I felt like I was in a horror film. Kept a very close eye on him for a few weeks. Kid is a doctor today and did not grow up to be a serial killer. At least yet. Off subject, but I had a parent say something disturbing. I taught middle school. The mother of one of my students introduced herself and began apologizing for her daughter's behavior. I told her that her daughter was fine in class. She leaned in closer to me and said, "Don't believe anything she tells you." I thought, what a weird thing to say. Later, the mother and father were arrested for molesting their 2 daughters. Does pointing and laughing at the empty corner of the room count? Might need to go burn some sage. One night, tucking my kids in. My then 4-year-old, "Mummy, when you die I'm going to keep your bones." My then 6-year-old, "Ooh, we could make a wind chime." The creepiest and also the sweetest thing my kids have ever said to me. Not my child, but my nephew, from a very Christian family, one day said, "If we all go to heaven when we die, why don't I kill everyone, then we can all be in heaven." He was 5 and meant it in the most positive way. He just wants to get everyone into heaven fast. My son told me he had thoughts of killing himself when he was about 16. Scared the hell out of me for months while we got him professional help. He is doing much better now at 18, but I am still worried that one day I will lose my son. If it makes you feel any better, I was this kid. I started feeling suicidal when I was 10, and was severely depressed from 10 to 21. Now I'm 23, married, happy, and my doctors have said that I no longer show any signs of depression. Your son will be okay. It may take him a little longer than most to find his place in this world, but it'll just make it sweeter when he finally does. I am so grateful for my life, especially because it's one I never planned on having. I was at a silent auction and there was a really creepy 100-year-old doll that I bid on as a joke. Turns out nobody else wanted it, so I won. My wife and I are talking the whole time about how creepy this doll was. As I stood in line to pay for it, my daughter asked to hold the doll, so I gave it to her. A few older ladies started coming up to her and saying things like, "That doll is older than I am," and, "You're so lucky to have such a pretty doll." I guess because my daughter had been listening to us talking, she would respond with things like, "Did you hear that? She's laughing at you." I tried so hard not to laugh at the look on their faces, but the last one got me. My daughter put her ear down to the doll's face and with a very serious look said to a lady, "I think the doll just said the F word." I was driving my son to daycare. It was just the 2 of us as I already dropped my other son off at school. My then 3-year-old said to me, "Mommy, I love you more than my first mommy." I said, "Your first mommy?" He said, "Yes, my first mommy in California. We live in the US, but about as far from California as you can get." I said, "You lived in California?" He said, "Yes, up until Jason stabbed me and then I came to you." I said, "Who is Jason?" And then he just started talking about something else. I tried to get more info from him on it, but he never talked about it again. So weird, and I can't imagine where he would have gotten the fodder for it to make it up in his imagination. The only Jason we knew was someone he saw only occasionally and my son liked him. There was no fear or bad feelings associated with him. The only media he saw at that point was various kids' TV. Still kind of freaks me out almost 10 years later. A few months after my mom passed, my daughter was sitting in the TV room. She looked down the hall and I could tell something caught her eye. She got up and said, "Yaya is in her room," and proceeded to go in my mom's room and shut the door. I could hear my daughter talking and laughing through the door. I was equal parts scared of and hoping to hear my mom too, but I didn't. My toddler, 2.5 recently shared a ghost sighting with us. She has done it before but usually not so confidently. We try very hard not to show her how interested we are because we don't want her to start making things up, more than she already is, hopefully speaking, lol. Anyway, she stopped mid-play with my husband and I the other day and completely had a mood shift. We had been all making Play-Doh ice cream and laughing and talking. She stopped, looked to her right, and set down her ice cream to wave. She said, "Hi ghost," pleasantly and just smiled. Was suddenly much more quiet and observant, more calm, not as lost in the playing. Similar to how we'd be if someone passed by us in public or interrupted for a brief moment. You're still in a good mood, but not going to rudely keep playing instead of saying hello. If that makes sense. It was an open spot of floor above our basement stairs. She was looking slightly up, so it'd have been about the height of an older kid, or taller and standing on the stairs. We both slowed what we were doing and made eye contact and said, "There's a ghost?" And she says, "Yes. Right there," all smiles. We nonchalantly went, "Oh, there you are." Hey ghost. She didn't even incorporate it into her game or make any more of a deal about it. She just started up her ice cream making again and let it be. I think the scary part comes from not knowing what's going on in her little mind, not even the ghost part. Because clearly, it's quite peaceful. Woman shrugging. My son told a cop my husband was lying about his name. TBF, it only lasted a minute because then he immediately said, "Your name is Dad." Woke up to my 1.5-year-old standing on the bed saying, "Daddy," repeatedly while looking at the door. Daddy is on the run for almost unaliving me. Grin. Needless to say, I didn't sleep. The man in the closet. He won't stop staring. Moved just last year. My 4-year-old said she saw an old man walking around in our shared closet and would stare at us. Did some research and the man that lived here before us died in that closet. I think babies and toddlers are so close to the other side, whatever that is or whatever that even means. While I don't have kids, I trust my mom regarding my sister. 2 unusual things happened when she was around 2.5 months years old. She spoke early and at an advanced level very young. One day my sister tells my mom that she misses the place before this one. My mom doesn't understand and she asks what she means. I was with the light before here. My sister offered helpfully. Not really understanding still, my mom asks if she means before, like yesterday or last week. Her bed? My sister shakes her head and says, before everything. The light. It's very comfortable there. Mom was weirded out by it, but kids say weird stuff, so she chalked it up to that. Until Christmas. My sister is now in her early 40s. The internet was not a thing when we were babies in the early 80s. She was not in daycare as my mom stayed home with us for a few years. I say this to preface the lack of exposure for what's coming. The day before Christmas Eve, when my sister was 2 years 10 months old, she tells my mom, "I really want a camel for Christmas." My mom is kinda shaken. She's never exposed her to camels. She has no idea where my sister got the word or even if she really understood what a camel was. Boo, just in case. My mom took her shitty sewing skills into the laundry room where her old sewing machine is. She cuts out a dromedary camel using 2 pieces of brown fabric and sews them together with some cotton balls. She gives the crappy nearly 2D camel a couple button eyes and a mouth made of uneven black stitching. Christmas morning comes, and my sister opens up this stupid-looking homemade camel. But without missing a beat she giggles and exclaims, "Oh good. It's Omar, my camel." If my parents didn't expose her to camels, they absolutely didn't expose her to Middle Eastern names. Yet, that's what my sister decided her camel would be called. Now the last odd factor. My sister and I are not biologically related. We're both adopted. I'm a Hispanic guy of Mexican ancestry, though really, my genetics trace back to old imperial Spain. But my sister? Yeah, my sister is Syrian and East Indian. Later, I asked my mom if I had said anything weird. Maybe I asked for churros or really wanted a chihuahua or something. But no. My mom shook her head and told me I was essentially silent as a baby. I didn't really cry and didn't really fuss. I was in foster care for a while before the adoption, and apparently my first foster home wasn't great. And though I spoke fairly early as well, I didn't say much. But I understood plenty. Yet I didn't make any creepy requests or have any otherworldly insights like my sister. And so my journey of disappointing my parents began. Edit. Years, not months. One day she told me she spends her whole period week imagining cutting out her uterus. She described it in great detail. My daughter at nursery, aged 3, came home and said, "Mammy, there was a lady on the roof eating cats." Poor bugger had a raging temperature. I cut my foot on a piece of broken glass. My kid, about 5 at the time, said, "Don't clean it up. I can use your blood for painting." My eldest had an imaginary friend he claimed to be the ghost of a child that died in our house. He would sit in his room having conversations with him. It was fucking creepy. His imaginary friend was quickly forgotten a couple of weeks after he started preschool and we all breathed a sigh of relief. My little friend went through a phase of telling dark stories when she was 3 to 4. She was also really into playing games about taking her toys to the doctor. We were playing and she said, "This toy is really scared of the doctor," and I said, "Why?" "Doctors are there to help us," or something like that. She said, "He is scared because this is the bad nurse. She gives him medicine so he can't move or scream and then cuts him open and takes his insides out." I was just like, yeah. That's a good reason to be scared. We have no idea where she came up with that stuff. She's 6 now and all her stories are about fairies and princesses. I kind of miss her dark stories, they were more creative, even though some kept me up at night. My mum told me a story about me years ago. When I was about 2, I was sitting in my high chair in the kitchen with my parents and grandparents and suddenly started speaking Welsh. I am Welsh, but I've never spoken it fluently, and we exclusively spoke English at home. I basically said that I was from X, a small market town about 20 miles from where we lived, that I used to work on a farm with my brothers and sisters and I didn't have any shoes. Apparently I also said that I preferred this house. I certainly have no memory of this other life, but it freaked my parents and grandparents out at the time. My kid and my niece have such an uncanny connection. They live in different countries. When my kiddo was 4/5, we went for pizza and this little random spot they had seen us drive past, whatever seemed cool. Kiddo hits me with the, "Me and niece always wanted to open up a pizza shop here when I was in a wheelchair and niece was my little girl. We lived across the street in that house." Okay, what a cute little story. They're a kid, whatever. Time passes and we are parked and see a man having a hard time getting his wheelchair out of his van. The parking space wasn't quite wide enough. We should help him. I remember how annoying that used to be for me and niece. Instantly took me back to our pizza afternoon. Yes, we helped the gentleman. We chat a bit about the previous life and kiddo has things to say that are repeated. Time passes again and we are visiting my niece. They haven't physically seen each other in months, but on video chat and through photos. My niece, learning to talk now and get her words out clearly, keeps calling my kid Nana, mother's father, and she gets so excited whenever my kid gets up and walks. I tell my sil about what my kiddos told me and she tells me that my niece always wants to go up to elderly people she sees in wheelchairs, trying to push them, help them with their mobility. My niece and my kiddo get ready for bed while we stay with them and they insist of sleeping together. They missed each other. My kiddo said, "It's been so many lives." Not creepy per se, but just always so interesting. My 2-year-old never stops talking and has said some really weird and freaky things lately. The creepiest one was when we were putting her to bed and she said goodnight to the closet man. When we asked her who she meant, she told us it was the little man that lived in the small access hatch she has in the back of her closet. Scary thing is she has never seen that hatch open, and I'm pretty sure she has never seen it before because there has been a big storage tote in front of it since before she was born. You bet I checked the hatch the next morning when she was downstairs and found nothing but dust and spiderwebs in there, so that made me a bit happier. When my son was about 3, he told my friend's pregnant wife that her baby was dead. A couple weeks later I was informed that she had a miscarriage. My 4-year-old son asked me if I prefer death or labor very loudly in public. Took me a sec to realize that those are the names of 2 songs that I'd been playing quite frequently in the house. Lol. So I have a 16-year-old young man, and one time he woke me up dead of my sleep at 2 a.m. and said, "They are coming," and gave me that odd freaking stare. Turns out he was fully asleep. My daughter was performing at one of her school events when she told me she saw my grandmother. She was dead and we missed her funeral that day. "Daddy, there's a caveman in your kitchen." It was a sticker she put on the floor. My kids are autistic and very minimally speaking. My oldest has a lot of echolalia, repeating words. He does use an AAC device and can communicate with it. The scariest thing he said happened one Wednesday when he came home from school. He always liked it when I asked about classmates, paraprofessionals, etc. He'd giggle, smile, flap his hands, repeat their names back. On this day, I mentioned his teacher. His face darkened and he looked down at his lap as he very softly repeated her name. He seemed scared. I thought it was odd. I didn't like this teacher. I thought she was unprofessional and didn't know WTF she was doing. It bothered me that night. I did ask myself, did something happen? But denial was heavy and I thought, no, that wouldn't happen to him. I found out the next day she had physically assaulted my son and a few other kids shortly before the school day ended. So when he came home scared, it had happened about 2 hours prior. So, that was the scariest. I learned a very big lesson about looking for warning signs. Tone is everything. She was 6. Mommy, I have a secret, but I can't tell you or they'll murder me. Edit. 3 days later she was kidnapped by my ex. He drew something and asked me what it was. As clues, he told me it was at the stairs. We were in the family area on the second floor of our house at the time, facing said stairs, but sometimes it was at the bedroom door, also on said floor, and it didn't have any legs. The answer is ghost. My little brother would say creepy stuff. The worst though is one night he threw a fit to go to my mom's friend's house to see the baby. My mom told him no, we're going over there this weekend. Little brother looked at her and told her if we don't see the baby today then we'll never see him again. What mom didn't know is as this conversation is happening her friend's older son was playing with a lighter and set the house on fire. Friend wasn't able to get to the baby's room to save him and she had to be rescued with severe burns and damaged lungs. The older son was a dick then as a child and became an even bigger pile of shit as an adult. I told my daughter I love her, that I love her sister, and that I love mommy. What about you? She said. What? Do you love you? She wanted to know. Skull. Not scary, but. My wife was pregnant and our 4-year was mad at her for some reason and blurted out, "You're going to have 2 babies just like I did." A few months later she had twins. My 4-year-old son had a habit of announcing when he had to use the bathroom. He would say, "I gotta go potty." One time he makes his business known and heads off toward the bathroom. He returns seconds later and says, "There's already someone in the bathroom." Now I do know for a fact that it's just the 2 of us home so the hair stands up on my neck. I ask him, "What do you mean?" He repeats, "There's already someone in the bathroom." Now I'm thinking, is it someone I see dead people, or someone in a hockey goalie mask? So I grab the biggest knife from my knife block and tell him to stay here. I walk to the bathroom, take a wide angle to see in, nobody. Slowly and quietly walk toward the shower and pull back the curtain. Nothing. By now my son has walked around the corner and I ask him, "Where did you see the person?" He points to an unflushed toilet and says, "See, someone's already here." His big brother didn't flush the toilet.